you for coming and keeping this issue and support for Palestinians and Palestinian sovereignty and justice for Palestine. It's really so important. So we're also honored to have Brian Cuthbert. He's going to MC the event, the accidental rapper, and who also works for Uplift. And so I will pass the mic to him.
Thanks very much. Thanks again to everybody for coming out on such a warm evening. Really do appreciate that you're here. I'd like to say a big thanks to the Call Palestine Solidarity Campaign for putting together this event and for asking us to host it. Just give me 2 seconds here. Just while I try and fix this. The Call Palestine Solidarity Campaign, I'd like to take a moment to highlight some of the BDS actions that they have taken in the last 2 years. Most notable, I think, maybe the global campaign against AXA insurance that they were a part of, and that led to eventually seeing AXA divest from all Israeli banks, as well as Elbit Systems, which is Israel's largest weapons manufacturer. This campaign isn't over, however. AXA do still have investments with other manufacturers from other countries that do supply weapons to the IDF, but it's definitely a huge win. Also, to give a shout out to the UCC BDS campaign, they had their encampment last year calling on the UCC University and as well the Tyndall Institute to cut ties with all Israeli institutions. We've seen the CPSC involved in actions around Collins Aerospace at Shannon Airport, supporting the Occupied Territories Bill, the Arms Embargoes Bill, and so many others. And in that kind of spirit, it's an honour to introduce Mahoud Nawajaa. Mahoud is the General Coordinator of the BDS National Committee. This is the largest Palestinian-led civil society organisation which are calling for boycotts, divestments and sanctions against Israel, and their demands are to end the occupation, dismantle the apartheid wall, for fundamental human rights for Palestinians and for the right to return for Palestinian refugees. Mahoud himself is the co-founder of the Il Mutada Association, as well as being a board member of the Stop the Wall campaign. He's an avid human rights defender, and he has faced political persecution for his activism. In 2020, he was dragged out of his bed in the middle of the night by Israeli forces, and he was imprisoned without charge. Upon his eventual release, he has redoubled his efforts and his commitment towards the cause of Palestinians for their freedom, for equality, and for justice. Please give a warm welcome to Mahoud Nawajaa.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you so much for Cork Palestine Solidarity Campaign for having me. It's an honor to be here. So thank you all for being here as well. I'll be speaking for 45 minutes. I've been limited. I'll be having a brief introduction about the situation in Palestine with some analysis, and then get to what should be done through the BDS movement as a call coming from Palestine. So, I mean, what's happening in Palestine now is not limited to one element, to the settler colonial apartheid regime. So, we do have a decade of brutal occupation that's imposed to Palestinians who live in 1967. And that's just one element of a settler colonial apartheid regime that's established in Palestine before the establishment of the State of Israel. So it's a settler colonial apartheid regime with decades of brutal occupation. And there's also, the apartheid regime is not only imposed against Palestinians who live in 1967, and the differentiation between the different laws that's dealing with Palestinians and comparing with the settlers who are in the settler colonies in the West Bank, but there is also discrimination against Palestinians who live in Israel and have an Israeli citizenship. There are 60 laws that discriminate against Palestinians. This is just a very quick example of an Israeli, and even in Israel there is a crystal clear separation in the community between the Jewish Israelis and the Palestinians who live in Israel. So Palestinians are not allowed to buy a house or an apartment in an Israeli-only Jewish neighborhood. While, for example, in Al-Araqib, which is in the Negev, Al-Araqib village was destroyed like more than 200 times, which is a Bedouin community. So this is a quick example of Israeli Jewish only school where the government pay annually more than $1,100 per students annually per year. And this is a Palestinian school in the Palestinian citizens of Israel neighborhoods where the government pay less than $200 per students per year. But what's really the most important that there are laws that discriminate against Palestinians. And then the denying of Palestinian refugees right of return. And now we're having a genocide in Gaza. So there is a genocide in Gaza, there is an ethnic cleansing in the West Bank, there are the ghetto system, I will come to this later, and yesterday they just announced the annexation of the West Bank. And now it's been implemented. So after the 7th of October, on the 8th of October, we released a statement saying that Israel is about to commit a genocide because they start dehumanizing Palestinians. So this is the first step of committing a genocide. And then they start what's so-called the carpet bombing. So they start the genocide in a way that they can ethnically cleansing Palestinians toward Gaza, toward Egypt, toward Sinai. They start the carpet bombing to the north, and then they start pushing people toward the south. So people refuse to leave. So people try to go toward the sea and toward the other borders, but they keep pushing people. And now, I mean, after the fail of ethnic cleansing people in Gaza, the genocide is still ongoing, and then they started with the starvation. They weaponized starvation and famine in Gaza now. But all of this is happening because of mainly complicity that we will come into this later. So the genocide against 2.3 million Palestinians, how the Palestinians are divided now, not because we are willing to be divided, but because of the force of the occupation, settler, colonial, apartheid regime. And just please keep this in mind because we who live in the 1967, we are not all the Palestinians. We are just 38% of the Palestinian population. 12% of the Palestinians live in Israel and have an Israeli citizenship, but 50% of our population are refugees. And this is really, really important. Because of that, we keep saying that the right of return is the most important right for the Palestinian liberation. This is the map of Palestine before 1948, and then after the 1967, and 2005, after almost 3 years of starting building the wall. Now, if anyone is visiting Palestine, every village, they just added 1,000 new gates against the Palestinian villages. So it's the ghettos now. Every village is a ghetto. And they close the gates on a certain hours. So there is a gate, one of the gates goes to Ramallah called the PCO. They open it from 9 to 4 or from 9 to 3. And even if you are willing to use that gate to go outside Ramallah, it take you like 3-4 hours because they security check every single car without any reason or any justification that it can be closed easily. I usually be able to reach that map, but if you can see the pointer, right here, there is a checkpoint called a container. And there is only one road with that checkpoint. There's only literally one road that connects the middle of the West Bank to the south. South is Bethlehem and Hebron. And there's only one checkpoint. And usually, I live in Ramallah, like in this area, but my extended family live in Hebron. It's a 100 kilometer. But now, it take an average of 7 hours to get to Hebron. Sometimes it takes 10 hours. Sometimes you won't be able to even cross that checkpoint and you have to go back to Ramallah if the other checkpoints behind you is not closed already. And there is another checkpoint here called Za'atara. They do the same against the north of the West Bank. And they just announced they will annexing the E1 area right here. So here's Jerusalem, this area. And to create something called the Greater Jerusalem. So they want to annex the E1 area, bring the Ma'ala Adumim, which is the biggest settlement in the West Bank, with Jerusalem, and then Palestinians will be using tunnels right here. This might remind you of something. This map. This is apartheid South Africa during the apartheid regime. People in South Africa, the black people of South Africa, if they are willing to go from this canton, Bantustan, to this one, they have to ask for a permit. Now this is happening in Palestine because we have to ask, not just now, like 10 years ago, for a permit to go to Gaza, and we never get that permit. It's the same, and it will be happening very soon, and this is really important because now if Palestinians need a permit to get some medical treatment in Al-Maqasid, in Jerusalem, for example, they have to apply through an application called the coordinator. The coordinator is the military officer that is overseeing the Israeli military operations in the West Bank. It's like a military ruling, administrative ruling. And I can tell you that because now they are building massive new roads in the West Bank. You can just see them if you are using the bypass roads, which is still a mix between Palestinian and Israeli settlers. We both use them, some of them, not all of them. Now they are building a huge infrastructure of roads in the West Bank that will be used for settlers only. So they can do a full separation between Palestinians and settlers. Turn the West Bank into cantons and Bantustans. And they can tell you that in the next 2-3 years, if I'm willing to travel, if I want to travel from Ramallah to Hebron, I have to get to that application and ask for a permit. Because all checkpoints and gates are well secured by camera, by face recognition program called the Red Wolf. And if anyone is visiting Palestine, you will see like 50 photos will be taken for you and your car per day because you just have to go through that checkpoints. And of course, everything else that's related to that settler colonial apartheid regime. But the most important question is that why this is happening? Why there is an ongoing genocide, a live stream genocide? Everyone can see that there is a genocide against children, against women, against everything that's just for the destruction of everything in Gaza. That there is an ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. There's all of these things happening, and everyone knows about that now. Not everyone, but at least the public, at least the government can see that. There's a resolution been vetoed in the UN. There's the ICJ, there's the ICC decisions, and everyone's just aware that there is a genocide, there is an ethnic cleansing by a settler colony against the indigenous population, and nothing is being able to stop this mad dog, which is a strategy that they call it in Israel, just killing everyone. Because there's something that we call a global complicity. Because the government of Ireland still are having these empty slogans of supporting Palestinians while they are facilitating the genocide. They are not taking any measures against Israel. Of sanctions, for example, of a military embargo against Israel, of preventing the U.S. Army from using the airspace or the airport to get supplies to Israel. This is why it's happening, because there is a global complicity. And because there is a global complicity, we need what we call a global response from a people of conscience, from the grassroots, to get the grassroots power to push for a change of the policy through what we call as the ending complicity is the most basic moral requirement for a meaningful solidarity with the oppressed, and that can happen through the BDS movements, through boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Those are the tactics that Palestinians are calling for people to adopt, to endorse, to be part. Not to practice solidarity. I mean, it's being. These tactics can take people to be part of the struggle, to contribute in a concrete way to the Palestinian liberation. So whether we do boycott, divestment, and sanctions, and in the BDS movements, we are not part of the political division discussion in the Palestinian political spectrum and situation, because there is a consensus behind the BDS movement. The BDS movement representing all Palestinians, whether 1967, 1948, or Palestinian refugees, or even diaspora, because we call on we have three demands: end occupation, end apartheid, and the refugees' right of return. And we consider this as the basic minimum requirement for any political solution. One state, two states, whatever states, we need these three rights, and then the Palestinian right of self-determination. Of course, BDS inclusive, non-violent, reject all form of racism and racial discrimination. And what do we mean by boycott? Boycott is boycotting cultural boycott, academic boycott, sport boycott, all kinds of boycotts in a way that whether we prevent this settler colonial apartheid regime from whitewashing its crimes against our people, or prevent corporation and companies from profiting the crimes of settler colonial and apartheid. And I'm sorry, I'm just running a bit because it's 45 minutes. So divestment is the second tactic. So some people think that BDS looks similar to South Africa. We are inspired by the South Africa anti-apartheid movements. But then there is some differences. So that was an isolation campaign. This is a BDS. So we are getting new tactics to that. And sometimes South Africa was like targeting individuals. We don't target individuals. We target complicity unless individuals are representing the Israeli apartheid regime or defending that or defending the crime or is being listed by the ICC, for example. So divestment, which is a very important tactic, is like when you just divest from a complicit corporation, when we pressure a pension fund to divest their investment from a corporation that is involved in the crimes of apartheid, settler colonialism, and the crime of genocide, or even just enable that genocide, and then sanctions. Before the 7th of October, we've been thinking of sanctions as something we will be starting in 5 years. We strategize for that, for 5 years. But now we are at the sanctions level. We are the S in the BDS movement. We've been succeeding in convincing the African Union of having a resolution of not allowing Israel to become a member. They allowed it before to become an observer member, but now they are not having Israel anymore. We succeed with the OIC, for example, the Organization of Islamic Countries, of having different resolutions, including that. This is recorded. Okay. Malaysia will be having a resolution in the UN to expel Israel from the UN. So now this is something we are working on. So we've been working with the UN bodies, with Colombia, with different countries to have sanctions against Israel. Of course, with other European countries like Spain, Belgium, and elsewhere. So this is what's needed now. We need sanctions. We need military embargo. We need all these complicit governments to stop funding the genocide and stop also enabling the genocide that's happening against 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza. The BDS National Committee, which is the leading Palestinian entity of the global BDS movement, is the biggest coalition in Palestine civil society, where even all political parties, they come and sit on the table of the BDS National Committee, leaving their political agenda behind. When they come to the BDS table, they just discuss the BDS and anti-normalization of course, and it's representing all Palestinian. We coordinate, we strengthen, we protect and strategize the BDS movement. And sometimes we protect the BDS movement from outside threats and sometimes inside threats. When some group goes against the principles and value of anti-racists, we just ask them to not do that. In 2013, Israel considered BDS as a strategic threat. What does this mean? They shift the overall responsibility of fighting BDS from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which is a Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to a ministry they call the Ministry of Strategic Affairs. That Ministry of Strategic Affairs, Gilad Ardan was the minister by that time. They were the ministry that taking care of the US-Israel relationship and the Iran nuclear projects. So they added BDS next to the Iran nuclear projects, which I feel proud of, to be honest. While we are a non-violent human rights movement. And then in 2014, Netanyahu mentioned BDS 18 times at the APEC. I mean, before that, they totally ignored BDS. In 2015, he said this is a new spectrum of arenas, battlegrounds. This is take us to all those trade unions, and that's 2015. Now it's really different. We are a massive movement, and if they fail in defeating us in different places. And by the way, in 2014, Netanyahu did a great work for the BDS movement, even better than our own media coordinator when he said that. Because before that, we've been totally ignored by the media, the Western mainstream media. And after that, they're coming to us to have quotes. How would you respond to Netanyahu? We said, he's stupid. This is part of that strategy. They adopt a new strategy. After Israel Katz, he was the Minister of Intelligence, Atomic Energy and Transportation. He said we should carry out a targeted civil assassination against the leadership of the BDS movement. And we know what assassination, a military operation, some sort of assassination look like. But a civil assassination is about character assassination. So it's about the reputational damage against the BDS movement. They tried this with two of us, me, and then with a co-founder of the movement, Omar Barghouti. With me, this is how it looked like when they started it. So this is me right here. Can you see that? Anyways, you can see that it's like from here. It's at dawn when they arrested me. This is almost 60 soldiers, and this is just the special force. They left the whole army on the hill because they want they don't want to come with their vehicles, so it would be running away. I don't know where, but I mean they just did that. They took me, they interrogated me for 20 days. They interrogated me for 20 days, accusing me of doing some military operations. With the BDS covering that. Of course, after 20 days of this interrogation, psychological interrogation, they let me free out of charges. And at the first day of interrogation, I told them, this is not about me, it's about the BDS movement. Because you failed in doing anything stopping the movement, because it's a semi-horizontal movement. There is no, even if you arrest me, you won't stop the movement. I mean, this won't harm IPSC, for example. They will have a campaign to free me, but this won't stop our campaigns. This will give us more campaigns and more ability to build a wider support. So I told them this is about the BDS movement, not about me. And then they tried the same with Omar Barghouti. It's not the same. They accuse Omar of tax evasion. I mean, for Palestinians, it's totally fine to tax evade Israelis. But it's Omar is well known in the US, but I mean, it's not good for the US context. So, and for Omar to be accused of a tax evasion. They interrogate him, they invaded his house. That was politically motivated. His lawyer, this is what they said to us. But after taking him to court and everything, he was sent free as well. They are not doing this anymore. They know that this strategy has just failed of doing anything. So they try to sabotage, espionage, and now they're criminalizing the BDS movement. So in the US, for example, there's like 40 states have different laws and resolution to ban or criminalize the BDS movements. The same in the British government and the parliament as well. They tried several times. We won over them 2 times. And there's no such a thing against the BDS now, but it happened in Germany, of course. I mean, I usually say like Germans always on time, especially when it comes of supporting a genocide. And this is what's happening. So yeah, the Bundestag have a resolution calling us racist, anti-Semitic, but that's a non-binding resolution. And we won 12 court cases in Germany. One of them in Bavaria on a federal level saying that BDS is not a racist movement. There is nothing racist by the BDS and it's by law. So we're still there, and also they are losing this battlefield of criminalizing the BDS movement. And even we got have a bigger coalitions than other, like the ACLU, to defend the right to BDS. They're not adopting or endorsing the BDS, but they are defending the right to BDS in the US because it's part of the First Amendment of the Constitution. So, so why that's happening? Why the government itself is panicking? First, because BDS redefined the way how people can practice solidarity with Palestinians. Can redefine that into a concrete steps that can contribute to the Palestinian liberation by using boycott and divestment and sanctions, and by breaking the ties of complicity and ending complicity with by meaningful solidarity. But this is a very quick indicators, and I can say that the latest 3 months indicator is not included, which is massive. It's already posted on the website. Yesterday, the Norwegian oil fund divested from some Israeli international companies. Before that, they divested from the Israeli bonds, 500 million US dollars, and others as well. For example, Oslo, Liège, and Barcelona, they ended their twinning agreement with some Israeli cities, and 12 city councils from Turkey as well, and many other. Carrefour, which we have a global campaign against, closed all of its branches in Jordan, all of its branches in Oman, all 3 of its branches even in the United Arab Emirates, even at that country that's normalizing with Israel. Court declared as an apartheid-free zone, and also into adopted the BDS movement and the LO, the Federation of Trade Unions as well. And this is just recent, for like we're talking about latest a few weeks. But this is a quick indicators of some of the successes of the movement. Veolia is the French company that built the light rail in Jerusalem, that is connecting Jerusalem with the nearby settlements, which is a grave violation of our human rights international law, and is part of the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in Jerusalem. They withdraw from Israel after they lost 26 billion US dollar worth of contracts. The last one was with a Kuwait municipality, and by the way, Cork was one of the city council to exclude Veolia. Martin, when was that?
2010.
2010, yeah. Cork excluded Veolia from one of the contracts. So that was like one of the massive campaigns. It took us 8 years, but it worth it. But now campaigns just take us a few months, and we will because of the movement. G for us as well, and then SodaStream, which is a factory opened in Ma'ala settlements. We had a campaign against the factory, and this is really important because Palestinian trade unions joined the campaign. The workers, I mean, they had like a propaganda videos. They brought Scarlett Johansson, a Bollywood actress, and she starts promoting SodaStream as an oasis of peace, because Palestine and Israel are working together, which is a terrible lie, because I mean, Palestinians working there because they need to work, not because they're really loving working in a settlement. While they were ethnically cleansed from that settlement, and then they're being asked to work in their stolen land. And then we had this campaign. This is one of the memes that we use by Scarlett Johansson. Her, ads were like set the bubble free, and then we said set the bubble free, Palestinian can't wait. And then they closed the factory, and she lost being a peace ambassador with Oxfam, because I mean the thing is that BDS is not just a moral call; it's something that businesses will be losing money because of the BDS movement. And now we can see that any company that is that we threaten at least to become a BDS priority target, they quit quickly. They said, okay, we don't need to be fighting the BDS movement anymore. And they just quit because they can see that these huge corporations are leaving the Israeli market. And because there is the spiral, what we call a spiral of collapse of the Israeli economy. Same as Orange. Orange is a French as well. We're very lucky with France and their corporation. Orange, it took us some campaigning, but then when BDS Egypt was established, they asked us to pick a target. We told them Mobility, because it's owned 99% by Orange. It took them 3 days and a Twitter store. They pushed Orange outside of the Israeli market. 3 days, because Orange know very well that if Egyptian people boycott Mobility, this is a 30 million compared to 300,000. So they quit. They even paid 90 million to their partner in Israel, which is a company called Partner. This is just from the last 6 months, from Colombia to UK pension fund, hundreds of millions of Israel from the block the boat. We're winning on challenge this transfer of shipment for the Israeli army by a ship called MV Catherine, and then by Maersk and by many others. The African Commission of Human Rights people also responded to our request. They adopted end complicity and ensure accountability against Israel. And then Israel will not be invited to the Nobel ceremony in Stockholm. This is also a campaign by BDS Sweden. So I mean, this is just a very, and Norway will fund the divested from basic and many other indicators of winning. And this is for me and Boom as well. This is for me is really important, because just to tell people that we are winning, we are gaining, we are getting that power of the grassroots, and we are at the sanctions level, because this is really important for Palestinians. Ending complicity is the most important thing, and we can end complicity by boycott and divestment and sanctions. And of course, all campaigns can be, part of the campaigns can be about raise awareness about Palestine, what's happening in Gaza, and everything to motivate people in a way to join the campaigns. Even in Palestine, I mean, when people visit Palestine, they will be seeing Israeli products in the market shelves, because it's a captive market. Israel is controlling everything. We do have our own manufacturers, but Israel is still controlling our market. But now, which is really inspiring, that Palestinians adopt BDS, adopt boycott as part of the resistance, as a culture. So now you can see like 80% of Palestinians are boycotting Israeli products, and they can find alternatives. And even if they don't find the alternatives, if it's not a necessary something, they won't just buy it. Again, in Palestine, the BDS National Committee is not just a committee, but we call it that way. It's a movement by itself. We have BDS clubs in university, we have BDS schools, we have BDS youth. This is just a quick video from a school. It's accessible online on the BDS movement.net under BDS Palestine. So I'm gonna jump.
Take your time. Take more time if you need to show the video.
Yeah. Okay, it's a nice video. So it's
yeah, that's cool. That's someone that I can believe.
So this is a very good example how, for example, teacher unions can be part of the campaigns. How we can integrate, I mean, raise awareness and boycott as part of their work in schools, for example. And then other example related to trade unions, how trade unions can be part of the campaign in a very concrete way, like what happened with the maritime transfer and shipment to Israel, when the workers in Barcelona refused of the docking of the Maersk shipment, and then it went to Tangier, and then they refused. and then the MV Catherine deflagged by the Portuguese government, for example, and Malta refused it even to enter its what we call it, the maritime borders. And so, I mean, this is how people can be part of the campaigns in a concrete way, in a way that can be very effective toward the liberation of Palestine. Apartheid-free zones is another example, called City Council declared them apartheid-free zones. And this is really important because why? Because this is about ending complicity. This is about adopting an ethical procurement guidelines that can exclude companies like HP, like AXA, like other companies from their procurements. And this is the way, I mean, a city council, when they adopt and become an apartheid-free zones, this is a very important push for the campaigns on a global scale. And this will make it easier for us to get to another city council telling them, okay, Cork, take this position, you need to do so the same. And now we're having thousands of free zones globally. A free zone can be a space, can be a cafe, can be a university, can be a school, can be anything to be declared as an apartheid-free free zones. Pension funds already divesting, churches divesting, academic cultural boycotts, tens of thousands, I might say hundreds of thousands now of academic and cultural figures are joining the BDS movement and declaring boycott of Israel and not to participate in anything related to whether it's play apartheid Israel or be part of any complicity of any kind with the Israeli settler apartheid regime. And it took us so much time to convince artists and others to be part of the movement, especially before the start of the genocide. I mean, Roger Waters, for example. Now Roger Waters is one of the prominent figures that's supporting BDS, and he's actively engaging in campaigns. When Roger Waters was coming to play apartheid Israel, we contacted him trying to convince him not to come. But then he came. That was a different Roger Waters than the one we have now, and we are lucky to have him. And after he came, he went a tour to Ashuhada Street in Hebron, and he said, okay, this is apartheid. How come I'm coming playing for apartheid Israel? And he wrote down something with the apartheid wall, and then he joined the BDS movement. Same with Stephen Hassel. He's a Holocaust survivor, supporter of the BDS movement. Of course, Stephen Hawking, he refused to come to Israeli scientific conferences and many others. Israeli Apartheid Week also, it's a week of action, happening globally, usually from February to April. It's about exposing Israeli apartheid regime, talking about BDS, raise awareness on a global scale. I think this is the final two slides. Sometimes people get depressed because they see, when they search for a list on the internet, there will be a graphic that having like 1,000 company or 100 company. This is not a BDS list. And we do not do very long list, we do targeting. And we have a criteria of targeting. The first one is the complicity level. So we choose the most complicit company to target. And then we check if there is the ability to mobilize wide support. If there can be a wide support for such a campaign. So for example, we have a campaign against Microsoft. Microsoft, the company itself, we have a pressure campaign against Microsoft. From inside, from outside, people can exclude it from contract, if possible, they can boycott it. But then we provide a boycott target for people to adopt, which is Xbox, for example. The products of Microsoft. So we ask people to boycott Xbox because it's doable. And we can have wide support against Xbox. But we can't have a wide support against Microsoft because it's a bigger company and people might not be able to boycott it. And then the possibility of success. We can succeed against Xbox, but not against Microsoft, at least now. And of course, visibility. And visibility is becoming really important. This was added as a criteria of selecting a target, especially after the start of the genocide. So McDonald's, for example, is visible. It's very visible. And they enabled the genocide by having free meals for the Israeli occupation army before they invaded Gaza. So that's a visibility where people can locally easily find that target, and they can have campaigns. So that can be also part of raise awareness of what's happening to Palestine. That can lead to other campaigns. And then operational principles, context sensitivity. We deal with different contexts on the BDS movement. Though Jordan context is different than Germany, for example. United Arab Emirates is far away different than Ireland. We can't work in the United Arab Emirates. We could be arrested. I'm not allowed to go there. And Morocco and many other countries. But yeah. And then gradual wellness and sustainability. So, and it's really important. Sustainability is something very important, and I mean all of them, and that's related to the possibility of success. So we don't launch a campaign. We do not launch a campaign that we know that we are not going to succeed, because it's a waste of resources. And this is a voluntary movement. We don't have so much resources. We are not a lobby group. We are not funded by anyone. So we are funded by grassroots, of course. But we need to be very reasonable when we choose a target. So what's needed now? What's now needed, especially by government? How we can pressure government in different means? Maybe we need to scandalize the government because they are just having an empty slogans, but then they are just doing nothing, and they are facilitating and enabling the genocide. So this is, I mean, by human rights experts have stated in order for all states, including Ireland, to meet their obligation triggered by the ICJ. So this is by the ICJ. It's not by the BDS movement, by anyone. This is by the ICJ. Cancel or suspend economic relation, trade agreement, academic relation with Israel that may contribute to its unlawful and presence and apartheid regime in the occupied Palestinian territory. This is the July decision by the illegality of the occupation, and also impose a full arm embargo on Israel, halting all arm agreements, import, export, transfer, even the dual-use items that can be used against Palestinian population under occupation and the genocide of Gaza. So this is what's needed. Imagine the starvation is happening in Ukraine. What will happen? Everyone will be panicking, sanctioning Russia. Everyone will be panicking, doing everything against Russia. But now it's happening in Gaza, so no one cares. Government on a governmental level. This is hypocrisy, and this is double standards, and it's even far ugly than just the double standards. Craig Bukhaybar, a former head of the UN Human Rights Office in New York, he resigns because of the genocide. And the day he resigns, he tweeted that boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israeli occupation, colonization, and apartheid is not only a moral imperative and constitutional and a human rights, but also an international legal obligation. So BDS is not only a moral duty, it's now a legal obligation to end complicity. And keep thinking that, and I keep saying that Palestine, especially Gaza, is the first line of defense, and maybe the last line of defense for humanity. Because whoever committed genocide in Gaza will be able to commit genocide in Africa, will be able to commit genocide because of the impunity, because of the fail of the mechanism and the whole system of the United Nations. Because, I mean, now they are damaging the reputation of the ICJ because it's, of the ICC because it had this arrest warrants against Netanyahu and the other guy. It's not Gallant. Yeah. So whether we witness the victory of Gaza, and we will be witnessing that, and by that we might witness the fail of all these UN mechanisms. So we might have something can bring a justice future for Palestinians, but I can guarantee that we will be seeing a free Palestine in our lifetime. And I'm sure about that because I can see the facts, can see the spiral of collapse of the Israeli economy. I can see that Israel will not be able to whitewash its crimes anymore. They commit a genocide, they commit ethnic cleansing, they are displacing Palestinians everywhere and the annexation and everything. There's no such thing can whitewash all these crimes, and they will not be able to do that because all of us together will prevent that apartheid regime from continuing its crimes against Palestinians and against anyone else. And thank you so much.